the rundown. Dr. Bean, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I like the enthusiasm. It's so great.
Oh, there's so much enthusiasm. That's why I started this whole thing, because of all the enthusiasm. But yeah, amazing. No, like, so many people, when I said I'm gonna have Dr. Bean on, and I didn't, no offense, I mean, I think you're a celebrity, but I didn't think anything of the fact that I invited you on. I was like, oh, another great guest. Here's a professional. Everybody's going to be super excited to talk to him. And I've actually gotten frantic messages being like, the Dr. Bean? The Dr. Bean who wrote this book? The Dr. Bean that was at this panel I was at? I was like, oh, cool. This is way cooler. It's even cool. I like the fact that somebody else thinks something is cool always blows my mind. So you're really cool, and many people think so. I hope you know that.
It's honestly great, but also I don't know. I don't consider myself a celebrity. I just kind of do the work and kind of have fun doing with it and doing these panels and chatting. To me, it's honestly, if you saw my daily routine, this is the fun. This is my vacation. Going to PAXs and doing these books. This is definitely vacation. To give an idea, like I was even in court today before this, just doing all depositions and everything like that because we get called into court
Right.
quite often on this stuff.
Right. Wow. So that's very. I'm sure that's very different than what people expect your job to be like.
Yeah, people just think we're like, and how does that make you feel? And we're like, that's not a question you're supposed to ask.
That one doesn't even make sense. All right, I'm trying to fix this volume levels. We're working with volume. I want to make sure that chat can hear you. Unfortunately, it's not doing the best we can. Let's do some mic checks. If
Okay.
yeah, okay. Just talk. That's much better. Perfect. I don't know that I did anything. I think he's just
You did
talking.
it all.
You
did it all.
I fixed it all. We did it. Turns volume up, gets corrected, and wakes neighbors. Yeah, I'm very sorry. I'm trying. We're gonna get there. I promise. All right. I think we're here, and I think we're where we need to be. So we can now go on and continue. But yeah. So how many years have you been doing what you're doing?
So I've been doing working with video gamers and geeks and all sorts of anime, you name it, for probably about 7 years now. And we have been focusing on, by we, I mean me and any other people I kind of run into that do this type of stuff. We focus in on what does it mean for the person to really understand themselves through these different mediums. And only recently has it kind of taken off, I think, a little bit more heavily than where it used to be. And we created a nonprofit called the Telos Project down here in Fort Worth, and we're 13 clinicians strong. Which
Wow.
I know. And if you were here 2 years ago, it was just me part time, and now I'm full time, and we have 12 other clinicians that are full time, and we do tons of psych testing and therapy for geeks, gamers, and nerds, and all sorts of fun stuff. And so, yeah, this is kind of like a weird dream come true because we do a lot of good work.
So how did you figure out that gamers were this niche that needed specific help compared to many others?
That's a good question. So I'm a gamer, a lifelong gamer. As I always say, even when we're at South by Southwest this year, I got into a lot of trouble playing Legend of Zelda growing up, and I was continuously grounded all the time. And there was one time I was grounded for a year off of playing Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and it's when you have to go into Jabba Jabba, and you're waiting for the silly king to just go eat. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I finished this part. I'm going to shut off before my parents get home. We're going to be good. We're going to have this in the band. They're not even going to know I'm going to be here. And then 30 seconds later, he still hasn't finished his stupid little eeing. And then all of a sudden, my parents walk in the door, and I'm like, well, I'm boned on that. And so for me, video gaming in itself has been a lifelong passion. And I've always felt a connection to the clients that have come in as gamers and who have a little bit more ideas about whether it's gaming addiction or whether it's actually a way of understanding themselves differently.
Got it. So should we just jump right into the $1,000,000 question of the day, which is
Oh gosh, we weren't expecting that from last week.
no, no, of course not. Who's still talking about this? The whole internet's already, moved on. But people here, people in this audience are definitely the kind of people who are gonna want to know about it. You know what? Let's keep it for a little bit later. But you guys, the $1,000,000 question, of course, is going to be, how do you feel about gaming disorder? But we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. We gotta build up. We gotta build up, just like the Who did the opposite of when it came to research. There was a joke there. There was a joke there, and I just couldn't put it together fast enough. But anyway, all right. So you became a video game doctor. But so tell us a little bit more about your practice and like what is it, from the day to day of it to actually like what kind of help do you provide gamers?
Okay, yeah. So I am the executive director and head clinical psychologist of the practice, and we have four other psychologists and a bunch of LPCs and MFTs who come on in and work therapeutically with geeks gamers, amongst other things, anxiety, depression, PTSD, autism. We pretty much hit the entire gambit, and we very much focus in on what can we do to be the most minimally invasive but the maximum benefit overall, and what can we do to help out these families in their times of needs and these individuals who may or may not need a little bit more help. And so for us, we very much created the practice around the concept of telos, and the telos is a Greek word, and it means a direction you want to go. So it's not like a goal you can ever attain because it doesn't end. It's like, where do you want to point your personal arrow and then move forward on that one? And so it doesn't have to be a straight line. You can twist and turn and curve and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But as long as you point yourself and you don't lose sight of where your arrow is pointed, then that is okay. That's what life is all about, is those twists and those turns and those abilities to manifest your own destiny in a sense through those ideas. And when we get gamers, which are my absolute favorite, we would always talk about the idea of, what does your character do for you? For some people, they only play very specific genres. For others, they play very specific characters. And when we focus in on that type of typology and that type of ideas for video gamers, we see a different personal essence come out of the person, and we can actually correlate and use the in-game choices, behaviors, and characters, and overlay it upon people's lives so quickly. And you start seeing all of these weirdly synchronistic ideas start coming into play. Like, say, people who tend to play healers or ranged characters tend to be a little bit more introversive, versus the melee ones tend to have to be a little bit more aggressive in their interactions with social people. So
Interesting.
it's totally interesting. Yeah. And so having gamers come on in and focus in on that aspect, they learn so much about themselves. And to build up to the gaming disorder question, we actually see a lessening of problematic gaming when we focus in on their characters and actually hit their ideas of character development.
So is that just like a way, is it a different way for me to express who I am through this character when otherwise I kind of wouldn't necessarily have the words and means to explain it? Is that part of it?
That's a really good way of kind of explaining it. So when we work with the avatars, we're working in a way called archetypal psychology. And archetypal psychology focuses mainly on what is the symbolic interaction of our everyday life. Now, sometimes you can do it through dream analysis, sometimes you can do it through synchronistic events, or you can even do it through what am I playing in this moment? Why am I gravitating towards a space exploration game? What does that mean for me? And a lot of times when we find that, it's actually, you're looking for creativeness and a way of expressing and doing something new with your life. And that is generally, once we start tweaking those types of things, and how can we get people to move past what they're doing in their normal life, it just all changes the way that they see the world. They're like, holy cow, all these things, doors just opened up for me, and I just did this one change. We're like, yep. you were gravitating towards this game genre or this type that was just like working in your psyche somehow, and all you have to do is just change it a little bit.
That is so cool. So then do people end up playing different games? Like, does it work both ways, where then you have the opposite happen, where people are like, okay, well, now I really become interested in this kind of gaming because I learned this thing?
Yeah, we tend to see usually people pick about 3 to 4 main genres of where they want to play, and they change around what they need to do. depending on what their psyche or their mindset is needing in that moment. So for instance, right now I'm playing Mario Party and or Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle because
I loved
I
it.
know it's so much fun.
It's
Oh my
so
god,
it's just like plain good like giddy fun. Like you play it and you're like hee hee.
you're just like, how did they come up with these characters? And
Oh
you're just
yeah.
watching like the some of the rabbits that come up, and you're like, goodness gracious, guys, you guys are awesome. And to so for that right now, it's a very tactician style game. And so for what I'm doing is we're moving some things around in our private practice, our and we're focusing in on how do we make this approach tactful. And so for me, it's like, well, I'm playing this game, I'm moving these spaces, I'm trying to do these things in this order, and we're having to focus in on the same idea and outside of the game as well. So for me, it's hitting both of those aspects and kind of creating an idea of what am I needing is a little bit more of a tactful approach to what's happening in my life right now, and that's perfectly fine. We've had some kids play Legend of Zelda, which is the book,
Right.
because they have difficulties with who they are, and they need to use what we'd call their metaphorical Hylian shield to save them from some peer pressure or some bullying or something else, and give them the tools such as those bomb arrows or those light arrows to really hone in on what do they have to do in that moment. And those light arrows doesn't have to necessarily be what we call a literal interpretation. He's not literally firing
No,
arrows at people.
I really thought they bring bow and arrows to school then.
I mean, it'd be funny. I would probably be, and I'd probably have to go to the school and be like, "Well, this is what he meant by this."
And then you have to go to the court, just like you did. So we're back full circle.
Just starts everywhere.
Yeah.
And so with that, we have to think of those different arrows as different ways of expressing themselves. So light could be a way of how do I disarm this darkness that's happening around my area, versus a fire arrow is how do I incite something so I don't have to necessarily deal with this anymore and get out of this arena that's causing me a lot of anxiety. So it all depends on how do we frame these types of ideas that we can find in the video games. And some people use Gear of War, some people like Destiny 2, some people like everything. It just depends on, are you familiar with it? Are you well enough versed in it? And can you use the concepts adequately?
Wow. Just wow. Because I know, I mean, I've read research about like how Dungeons and Dragons is used for therapy, and I've read research just in general, like, you know, all the tabletop RPGs and stuff, because you can literally embed the character.
Hmm.
But I mean, when you have a character like Link, right, where you literally I mean, the whole point is that you have the silent protagonist that anybody can insert themselves
Yep.
into. It's really easy then to insert the child that you're talking to and to say like, well, imagine you really are Link. What is that like? That's so cool.
Absolutely. And it works. The one thing that I've always found is I'm adopted myself. And so I work a lot with adopted and foster youth in video, and they are transfixed by certain video games, and they all have what we call that orphan archetype. And what they're trying to do is getting an idea of how do I use this to empower myself to become different, because they've been orphaned on some level. And when they can manage that aspect, and they can come to realization of that, they feel empowered to go out into the world and actually do a lot of good. And as long as they're aware of, am I trying to be a hero? Am I trying to force this? Or am I going to actually use this in a different manner to further what I need in this moment?
Wow. Wow. I'm going to say wow a lot, you guys. Somebody's going to, by the end of it, you're going to be able to make a funny compilation of me just going, wow.
It's gonna
Wow,
be great.
that's awesome information. So what is, I have to ask, it's a little bit of a side question, but what is the orphan archetype?
So the orphan archetype is an idea or metaphorical idea, is someone who is been cast aside, doesn't have any sort of real support. Family members aren't really there for them. They've had a difficult time uh, feeling connected to other people. And foster youth are just like the prime example for it. So these people are ones who have been either had difficulty with PTSD, been traumatized, been in the foster care system for a number of years.
Cool.
They don't have
I'm a
anyone that
weenie.
they can actually look up to as like a mother or father figure. And what they have to understand is, how do I use that to my advantage, and how do I focus in on that to not understand myself as how society sees an orphan, as a waste of energy, but more along the lines of how do I use that energy to get what I need in this moment.
Got it. got it. Wow again, but
Yeah, I was waiting for the wow.
yeah, well, I used got it instead. I thought I'd switch it up a little bit. And then can we also back up? I want to make sure I want to make sure that everybody knows what archetypes are and what archetypal arc I know English when what archetypal psychology is.
Absolutely. So archetypes are kind of symbolic interactions, symbolic things that are metaphorical in nature. When we think about archetypes, and I'm trying to give a good one. So let's do a James Dean movie, Rebel Without a Cause. When we think of that, we think of James Dean, right? If he was just being a rebel for the sake of being a rebel, we'd call his character that he was playing an archetype, or someone that says a heart of gold, or the idea of this one that I'm not a big fan of, but this gets better with the older clinician generation, is the girl next door,
Mm-hmm.
and something like that. And that's those are what we call archetypes, because when we think of those phrases, those words, it brings up an image, it brings up an idea of what does that actually mean. So that is what we call like an archetype. So anyone that you are watching in a movie, they're playing an archetype. What's her name, use them as video game tropes in a sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are what we'd call our archetypal energies, archetypal beings. They're just being literalized in a different way. Now, archetypal psychology is heavily focused on what is the meaning behind these archetypes, behind these different ideas. And it was done by Carl Jung, then to James Hillman. And through those ideas, we really focus in on what am I getting out of this? Am I being held back by this archetype? Am I trying to figure out why I am being drawn to this? Do I need to use my energies, psychic energies, not like telling the future, psychic energy isn't like kind of like your mental energy, to have a different idea of where do I need to go now? What is this trying to tell
Wow.
me? Ah, there it is. We got it again.
It was a littler wow. It was a littler wow this time. So what made you, so we touched upon this briefly, but what made you specifically want to follow this career path? How did you, because it sounds like a big build up. I mean, other than the fact that, like, of course you played video games and you enjoyed Zelda and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, but what is it about, like, psychology in itself that you were like, I gotta do this?
This field is so amazing. I love psychology, and there's times that I'm just like, this is stupid and ridiculous, guys. Like, come on. There's a love hate relationship I think everyone who's in the field has with it, with the field itself. And so for me, it was always, I've played tons of games. I've played tons and tons of thousands of dollars in games and systems. And what the people can't see is right outside my doors, right over there, is actually my entire like all my Nintendo stuff and everything, and I can tweet out a photo of it later.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and it's like all of the different systems and everything that are there. I'm missing a couple, but we'll get there eventually. And so for me, everyone that I've ever gone training with, through grad school, undergrad, master's program, everyone always was like, "Oh, video games, man, that just sounds like you're wasting your time." Gosh, I'm like, actually, there's a lot of good stuff that I've learned from video games that I feel like everyone should have the ability to know and how to work with that. I don't have a business degree. I've built up a practice crazily. Don't ask me how. I just did it. I don't have an MBA. We've just figured it out as we went. I play a lot of strategy games. I love them. They're fantastic. StarCraft teaches don't expend your resources. All right, we didn't do that. Have multiple sources of income. We have that. Do the best you can to move forward. We're doing that. Those are just the types of things that I think that one video game can really kind of teach us, and it teaches us in a way that we don't even know we're being taught it. So when we're going through and learning these things, and people are saying, "Oh, that's a waste of a time. That's field that that's just we should probably do something else or have them stop playing video games." I'm like, no, that's not how we're gonna do this. And
And so, did you find a group of people, a group of other doctors that are kind of that agree with this mindset, right? Not
only recently.
Okay.
Honestly, so going all through this up until it was actually PAX South of 2018 that I really started getting in touch with Dr. B a little bit. and also some of the other clinicians and other researchers. And then it all culminated into PAX West last year, where we
Oh.
had like 15 to 20 of us all in the same room. And we're like, holy cow, guys, like these are like the big names right now. We're only missing a couple people of this. And it just took off in amazing fashion in that capacity. And we have just stayed really good friends since then. And we constantly talk over Discord, text messages, and we're doing tons of projects together right now. And we are just loving it. And so it was really just last year where we kind of found our group and we're just really pushing ourselves and everyone else to just be the best you can be. But don't overstress yourself because it's not worth it.
The, what's really cool for you guys who don't know, Dr. B is our fantastic clinical psychologist, who is the clinical psychologist for Take This, which is an organization that we represent as ambassadors. So for those of you guys who don't know, Google Take This, learn a little bit about them for sure. But so, and Take This has like also a pretty big network of gamer
Very,
doctors.
very large.
So cool. So cool that like there's this little niche that's building out where, I mean, I believe that there's been a need for it for a long time, right? Considering we're in a space where video games, I mean, they're not going anywhere, right? Since the 1980s, it's been building up and they've been taking more and more of a prevalent space. And now it is a pastime. It is a common pastime for a lot of people. And then, so to have a little niche space in psychology for that, I mean, like, overdue, right?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? This is like one of the best things ever to get all of us talking on either a panel or just talking with people after a panel is one of the most amazing things. We'll lose time. Like we're like, holy crap, our panel ended at like 4 and it's now like 7. We're like, where did the time go? And it's just because when you go to these conventions and you see all these people, I have never been to a convention where if someone falls down, if something happens to someone, or someone's having a difficult time, I've never seen more people who have no clue who each other are rush over to that person and say, "Hey, are you okay? What can we do? How can we help you out?" And I've been to APA, and let me tell you, they're just a bunch of snooty doctors.
That is
And things along those lines.
I worked as an editor at John Wiley and Sons for 5 years. So I worked mostly with I worked with other societies, but I know of the APA and I know colleagues who worked with the APA, and they're one of many, of the science type.
They're definitely like, is this science based? Is this evidence based?
Yeah.
Not everything has to be evidence based in order for it to be an important thing or cause a sense of change or to be able to help someone. Because if we only focus in on the evidence-based stuff, then we're only focusing on what we call correlational data, and that's just not. Don't even get me started on that, because we'll just be here. And
this is a great podcast to waste time. I'll tell you that. No. I'm kidding.
And when we can see the change in that one person, sometimes that one person makes all the difference. And when we can see the impact in these kids, these adults, of using this technique, this ability to really change their lives, it's amazing. And I have to say that we literally have to try to force people out the door, because they don't want to end therapy. And we're like, you are done. You're good.
Go
for the
home.
Like you're good. And discharging them is one of the hardest things ever, because they're like, I want to just stay in here because I feel so good when I come in here and I learn so much. And we're like,
oh
yes, but your problems and your difficulties right now are, they're in a really stable condition. It's not saying you can't come back.
Yeah.
But right now you don't really need us right now, and that's okay.
Oh my gosh, my heart.
Yeah. And no, it's great. And to have everyone do that, we're like, wow, we're just making this massive impact on people.
That is so like heart. That makes me feel so good and like makes me feel so hopeful. Do you guys do tele appointments? Like, is it possible? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
We do. We have cameras in all of them, in all of the rooms.
Did everyone hear that?
Just by the chance that someone either can't make it, or someone in rural areas can't find someone that is a specialist. We've done some stuff across state lines, but we have to always be a little careful with that and check with the boards,
Right.
make sure they approve it and things like that.
Yeah.
But at least according to Texas, as long as we are the ones calling them, then generally they're pretty much okay with it. Just plays around with other boards. Yep. And we keep all sorts of insurance. We are on like 45 different panels. It is ridiculous what we're
on. Man. All right. Well, we'll. I mean, I don't video game, and this is cool. This is really freaking cool. It's cool that you've set this up, and it's cool that it exists, and there's this like safe haven and space for people. That's amazing. And the other thing I think that is also amazing. I'm clearly a woman of many words tonight, you guys. Amazing, wow, cool. But I think it's probably very wonderful the fact that you found your own people. Like I know we're talking about everybody else and what you do for everybody, but in this community, in this space, you've been able to find your people. And there's really nothing better than that.
No, there's not. I mean, I think for everyone, and I would assume that, and this is an assumption just so everyone knows, is that when people go from high school to college or just leave high school and don't go to college, they drop out of contact with a lot of people. And it's usually the ones that stay in contact really make a difference in their lives. Going through college in my doctoral program, I'm the only one who was interested in video games. I literally was the youngest person in my doctoral program because it specialized in depth psychology, not depth as in deep. And that's usually a field that gathers a lot more of the older clinicians or people who want to become, because they've searched for something different. So for me, I didn't really find too many people that I could gravitate towards or be there. So even after I graduated college, I'm like, this just feels very loner besides me being friends with Chris Ferguson. Just feels like, well, we're going to find someone someday. And then we just started doing all these projects, and the pieces just fell in line perfectly. And it just, finding the group is one of the best things you could ever experience.
Yeah. And then everybody's group is out there. That's another piece that I want to throw out there. Okay, so I'm assuming you get back to the practice itself. So I'm assuming you get a lot of moms that come in that are like, my son, that's not a good, my son is addicted to the video games. He plays them all day. Here, take care of him, make him better. Or my daughter, all she does is play games. I'm sure you hear, like, right? Is that stereotype of a parent around?
It's alive and very well thriving at this point. Very, very well thriving. The biggest thing I'd say that we find out when those types of parents come in is they don't even know what games they're playing. They don't know what system they have. They have no knowledge of this, or even what animes they're watching. I see a 15-year-old girl who watches a ton of anime, and she's watched more than I have, and she's younger than me, and I'm like, holy cow, like I gotta get on this. Clearly
that's what you're like, oh, I gotta catch up.
So I just had to go watch all of Black Clover to really get an idea of what's going on with her and why she gravitates towards certain characters in that one. So to be with her mom's like, she's watching this anime. It's just cartoons. I don't understand it. Why are we doing this? Like, why are we even talking about this? This isn't even part of it. Fix my daughter. And I was looking at her and be like, the fact that you don't know what anime she's watching, the fact that you don't show an interest is probably one of the dividing reasons that you guys don't have a relationship, a really stable one. And she's not talking to you because what I just heard you say is, I don't approve of what you're doing. And if I don't approve of what you're doing, then clearly I don't approve of you. Well, that's not what I said. I said, that's kind of what you said.
That's
I need you to accept
that. Yeah. That's really because that's usually the case. Is that here's my problem. That's not your problem. Your problem is you. You're welcome.
Absolutely, and just being accepting of whatever they're doing and letting them flourish, because that's amazing. I mean, I watched the one guy who does like Dragon Ball Z videos and to his poor mom, and does like these weird things and like ends up like trying to do a fake Super Saiyan, and mom's like, fool, what you doing over there? I'm gonna slap you with my shoe and stuff like this. And I'm like, this kid's awesome. I'd love to be friends with him and to kind of help out with that. But mom's Clearly, his mom has no clue what he's doing with DBZ or anything like that. But it's just that's generally the people that we see. But once we bring them in and once we have them watch it, play the games with them, or do the activities with them, they're like, holy cow, I get why they like this stuff, and I don't necessarily see it as so detrimental anymore. I see it as something fun, and I want to enjoy it with them. And it's just amazing to do that. And then dads like to get in on the Mario Kart and ravage the whole thing and be like, we have to teach him frustration tolerance, which is hilarious.
That is hilarious. I probably could. I mean, when I play Mario Kart or Smash, I could probably use some of that as well. I can't. I don't know. I don't know many people who don't, because there's a I don't know if there was a video somewhere somebody said that playing Smash is the equivalent of taking your controller and just throwing it down 3 flights of stairs and then seeing if you won.
Yeah,
and
it could be.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And my husband is very offended by this. He's like, there is so much that goes into me playing each game. I was like, okay, sorry.
Okay, I have a full disclosure. My wife doesn't play video games. She doesn't care for them. She doesn't do anything. She uses the same stuff that I use, and she sees great benefit to the theoretical ideas that we use. But if I play her in a fighting game like that, I will lose. And I like all that technique that your husband just said, like, oh, there goes so much going to it, goes out the window. No, she is like smashing buttons and she's doing combo moves. And I'm like, I don't know what you just did. She goes, I don't know either, but you're dead. So haha. And I'm like, goodness gracious. She's not competitive at all, but you get her into the fighting game and good luck. Gotta take a knife and stab you. She's awesome though.
Ruthless, but amazing. Yeah, she's my wife. Amazing. I love her. I love her.
Very, very much so.
So when people come in and we're going back, we're a little bit all over the place, but we're trying to bring it back. So when people come in, particularly, you have these kids whose parents are saying this stuff. Do you kind of blame the media? Do you blame the Fox News, the NBCs for being like, is your child brain cells dying slowly? More at 9, and they show somebody playing video games and like it's the end of the world. Is that why? Like why? Or is it because these people genuinely don't take an interest and so they don't know and so they assume the worst? Like what?
I think it's a bit of both, but more along the lines of that the news medias like to do a ton of, they'll grab onto one study and they'll be like, look at this thing. This thing is causing all this destruction and chaoticness and blah this, blah that. Like ABC News just did one a couple weeks ago with Jamie Madigan, and they interviewed him for an hour and a half because we're friends with him. And they showed 6 seconds of this entire clip. Yep, that's kind of how it goes. Like when we get interviewed, we don't know what's going to be used, and we'll talk for half an hour.
Or I'm using the whole bit. I'm just full disclosure. Yeah. You're talking for the whole thing's going on YouTube.
Oh yeah, no, and that's fine. I mean, that's how it goes. We know that when we're being interviewed, we don't know what's going to be used and what's gonna make us look like, and we're just hoping it's going to look good. But generally, the media will do stuff that is going to sell, and so they're going to gravitate towards an article or something like that that's going to be like, look, the dopamine pathways are being activated when they're playing video games. Yeah, wonderful. It's at 150% of the normal thing. Want to know what cheese does to your brain? It's at 275%. Oh my God. You want to know what football does to it? It's 500% when your team wins. Let's talk about dopamine neuropathic ways here. And let's really look at this from an entire perspective.
Right.
A child, your newborn child, releases more endorphins, more dopamine than anything in this world ever can. Never mind, I think like heroin and a whole bunch of other stuff is at like 5,000% of what a normal dopamine pathway actually represents in the human body. And so if we take those ideas into consideration and look at it from that aspect, we're like, wow, video games, they're not as bad as that log of cheese I just ate. And those are the types of things we have to be aware of and correct. For every one bad study that comes out that does something along those lines, we literally have to publish 10 more studies in order to refute it. It is ridiculous the amount of stuff that we have to do to show like this study was crap. Why are we even paying attention to this? And by the time those 10 go out there and get rid of that, there's another 30. And so it's a never ending cycle that is just exhausting at some point.
So, what do you consider to be success then? With like, what would a successful patient look like to you?
So a successful patient, definitely when they come on in and their parents think that they're suffering from video game addiction or gaming disorder or something else, they're just not in there. We really look at what are the symptoms, and when we see their symptoms of depression, anxiety, we actually target those symptoms rather than the anime, the video gaming, or anything along those lines, because that is really what is going on with them. They're using anime, video games, other stuff as a coping mechanism. And when someone uses that as a coping mechanism, it makes them feel better. It helps them cope with what's going on. If we take that away, then what do they have left to manage their mental health symptoms? Not much. But
Right.
if we use that secondary, possible secondary condition, if we use those anime tropes, if we use that video game aspect to really look into what is going on with that person, then that all of their anime habits, their gaming stuff actually lessens. And we actually see them just naturally stop playing as much, not because they want to stop, but because the tension has been reduced and the depression, anxiety, ADHD, something else has been managed appropriately through therapeutic intervention.
Got it. Got it. We have a question that is relevant to what's happening right now, so I want to ask that first. Have you ever found cases where the parents blame video games for this and that, like lack of being social, exercise, but they're sort of blind to their own activities, just being as absorbing, like browsing Facebook constantly on phones or watching TV? I suppose I'm curious to know how you may have responded to those situations.
100%. Every time. Let's say one of the biggest ones that we see right now over the last couple of weeks has been my kids watching all these gamers play on YouTube and blah this, blah that. Well, what are they watching? Well, they're watching them play the game, and then they're going and playing the game, and I just think that's too much screen time. Well, what are your concerns about your screen time? Or what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this and this and this and this, and you're like, wow, it really sounds like you're doing quite a lot of screen time too. How do you think that's affecting you? And we use that in that capacity, and it just like switches light bulbs. They're like, oh, maybe we need to engage a little bit more as a family. I'm like, maybe.
Maybe that's the true culprit. Who would have thought?
Or something else along the lines of maybe just showing an interest. But yeah, normally when we see that, a lot of parents aren't even aware of what they're doing.
Hold on. Something happened and I don't have your mic at all. 1 second. Sorry.
Done.
Okay,
no.
you're back. You're back.
We're
Okay.
back.
I was trying to fix your mic and I broke your mic completely. I'm not touching anything. We're done. We're done. Whatever happens to the mic is what happens to the mic. I'm sorry if the volumes are going up and down. I'm really sorry, guys. It is what it is. Thank you for rolling with it.
No, I'm kidding. So when we talk to these parents and we bring into enlightenment to what's going on with their own screen time habits and what's going on with their kids, we start seeing a cultural change within the family dynamics, and that's really what we're looking for. A lot of parents are not aware of what they're doing or aware of anything else that's kind of going on within their family structure. And so when we target the individual, we're also targeting the family. And we're saying that this isn't a problem just to fix your child. This is maybe a family dynamic problem that we have to have a conversation about.
Got it. And do you see people completely walk away from that, or are people generally pretty receptive?
Parents don't like to hear it. It's the number one thing.
Yeah. Well, nobody really wants to be told, "Hey, it's wrong. You're wrong."
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
it's really amazing when you get a parent in there and you get the child in there too, or the adolescent, and you're like to the child or adolescent and say, "What do you think about your parents' screen time and what they're doing?" They're like, "Well, they're on their phones all the time. They're on the computer. I don't have anything to do. Like, I'd like to talk to them, but they're not available, or if I like ask them a question, they're like, not now, I got to finish this." And I'm like, ooh, that sounds a lot like how they're video game playing, huh, mom and dad? They're like, well, that's not what happens. And then the kid just rattles off like 6 times that it happened, and I'm like, that sounds like it's happening quite a bit. What's your retort to this? And they're like, that's not really what happened. I'm like, well, let's hear your side of the story. And they tell it, and then they like halfway through the story, they're like, I guess that is kind of happening. I'm
I
like,
guess that's
yeah,
exactly what happened.
yeah. And so we see it quite a lot, and it's what we kind of see as a cultural phenomenon is with tech coming up and being all new, and every 6 months we see something more drastically new, and it's starting to lessen down to every 4 to 6 months. That we don't always know how to normalize these types of things. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. The idea of that is to then how do we manage this in appropriate manners? And okay, that's a learning curve. Every family is a little bit different. Some parents want their kids to just pass their classes. Some parents want them to have A's and B's. It's all about the family dynamics.
Got it. Thank you for answering that question for GL Gamer, by the way. I'm going to go
Absolutely.
through and ask you a few more questions that were asked through the episode. So, Javon had asked, does how does the interviewee have a view on psychology of achievement hunting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that when someone is looking for achievements in video games, is they're looking at what we call a completionist, standard completionist mannerism. And the question I would always have is, what is that giving to you, and where do you not feel like you're achieving in your life, and why do you feel like you need to get that achievement in this capacity? And generally, when we start to see that, they're like, well, my grades are down, or they're like, work's not going so well. So by me getting this trophy on this PSN network, or me getting this achievement in
Mm,
World of Warcraft, it makes me feel better, like I've actually done something. Or maybe their job is data entry, and let me tell you, that's super boring. And they're feeling really depressed about it. This makes them feel like they can achieve something. So I think that to bastardize and to say like all this one thing is in this one area is bad is not a good idea. Everything in moderation is manageable, and everything that can be done in other aspects with managing how we work within the worlds in life and balance is truly important of what we do.
what is the equity structure of the practice and how is it funded? Okay, hold on. We're going to skip that question. Revenue. Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's keep the questions to the actual psychology and not to like the business of psychology. As much as I feel like that's like a summary of going to college, period, you always learn the craft, but never the business of the craft, but you're expected to do the business of the craft in order to survive.
I
Uh,
can I can briefly answer that without getting too busy.
sure, sure.
So basically, the word of mouth is if you do a good job and you're on a whole bunch of psychological panels, like here in Fort Worth, we are on that 30 to 40 different panels that we have always been on, and people drive 5 hours just to see us because of our specialty in psychological
Wow.
assessment and other areas of what we can and cannot do. And so we have made a really good name for ourselves, but we also take a lot of insurances that 95% of the people in our area do not take. And so we are definitely someone that is there to help out. So, business side is if you're going to go into psychology as a therapist, take insurances, make a name for yourself, make sure you're doing good work.
All right, there you go, guys. Even that question was answered. Optimistic Gamer, who's a huge fan of yours and talks about your books a lot, and he was one of the people that messaged me and was like, "The Anthony Bean." So maybe just a little. So the question that he wanted to know about is, what are the video game doc's current and all-time favorite video games?
Oh, that would definitely. Oh, that's a hard one. So I am definitely more of a Nintendo person than a Xbox or a PlayStation, and that is just because I just have always grown up with those ones. But I also feel like their storylines are just generally better. I feel like the other systems just try too hard. Zelda is by far is my hands down my favorite game of all time, and that's why we had to start with that one with the book. But also, oh god, space games. I'm playing Gemini
Mm-hmm.
Star Lords Warlords right now. Playing the Rabbids game on Mario. I just finished Odyssey as well. And so for me, games that have a good storyline sometimes have a little humor, but also have the ability to really create that immersive experience, something an avatar that I can relate to. And I think that's really what drives all of us
Right.
to the different games, because if we didn't relate to the avatar, we didn't relate to what's going on in the game, we wouldn't play it. So
Right.
like Super Smash Brothers, I don't really care for that type of
Well,
stuff.
the storyline is brilliant. Luigi beats the living Jesus out of Mario. It's yeah. What's there not to love?
But you get me into a racing game, and I'm gonna blue shell your butt so hard.
Oh, you're one of those guys. I mean,
Oh
when you
yeah.
get a blue shell, I always let everybody know I have a blue shell, and then I'm like, I mean, it's going out. I can't hold on to it. I need other items, so brace your butt. I guess that's the best
Oh
I could
yeah.
tell you. Yep, yep. Uh, Somebody asked, how do you feel games like Doki Doki Literature Club affect players' mental health? Have you played it?
I have not played that one.
So for everybody, quick spoiler, you might want to mute this for 3 seconds. So what happens is that one of the characters is there's a deep relationship found between like two of the characters. You're the protagonist. You're a male protagonist, and it's set up like a story game. The ones where there's a name for it. There's a name for the genre, and it's when you're the protagonist and then everybody else is responding. Their visual novel. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is kind of a dating sim, but it's a visual novel. Thank you so much. But yeah, so it's set up that way, and you're playing Nick, the main character, and then at one point, Nick goes back to their friend. So you find out that everything, this is the spoiler part, everything is actually plotted by one of the people in the literature club is actually evilly plotting to have you all for herself. And it's like super messed up how she gets around to doing it. But one of the things she does is she convinces through like backhanded manipulation, she convinces one of the girls that's in the literature club to kill herself. And
Oh.
the dramatic moment is that you walk in, she tells you like, hey, you should go check on so and so, I wonder how they're doing. And then you run as fast as you can, you get to their room, and she has hung herself. And there's like a good 2 minutes of just looking at this animated body. Yeah. It's I found it rather disturbing, and I feel like
It sounds pretty disturbing. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel so. I guess maybe the question should be more general, and I'm sorry if I spoiled it for somebody for the wrong reasons, but I don't recommend playing it. If you're in this chat, chances are when you play that game, you will not feel great. That's done fucked up. So my question is, how do you feel? Have you seen other kind of suicide depictions in games, or suicide used as a plot device? And how do you feel about that?
I don't think that it's using mental health as a weapon in that capacity. I don't think, and I'm using that as that term specifically as a weapon.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly how I felt about it. I was like, that's not. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not good. I don't think that helps out anyone. It doesn't really give us an idea of what benefit can it do, and it actually might be severely triggering for a lot of people. And it's just like I'm actually having trouble finding words for it, but I don't think that I would like to hear that someone had that game and then had maybe some sort of triggered moment of, wow, this is really powerful, in the wrong ways. And so
Mm,
I think that is not necessarily something that is beneficial. Like now, if we talked about Heavy Rain or Papa EO or
mm-hmm,
something along those lines,
mm-hmm,
I think those have the characteristics to really hone in on aspects of what story can we relate to. The alcoholic father, the serial killer trying to get your son. It unlocks certain aspects of who we are as a person, but also how can we relate to this story, because obviously not all of us are gonna be able to relate to a serial killer trying to get our son. But it creates a paternal instinct. In that paternal
mm-hmm.
instinct, you can see it with people who are not even parents yet. And so, to me, that would be more of an aspect of how do we utilize those stories, not using mental health as a weapon against the player.
That was exactly what my issue with it was. It wasn't that if that had been used as maybe a lesson or so, I don't even really know how it would have been acceptable. And yes, GL Gamer, they do give you a trigger warning in the beginning and say that if you especially if you have mental health problems, I think it like says if you have mental health problems, we don't recommend that you play this game. And everybody of course goes, yeah, sure, and clicks through and plays it anyway. But
They also have stuff on cigarette packs, but
and people are smoking. Yeah,
yep.
exactly. But that was my main beef with it. It was that specifically that they used it as a way to shock you, and it was like there could have been 40,000 other things that they could have done to do that, but they chose to use something that is serious and as it is, final.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like even a better way just hearing about it they could have done is you were there to stop her from doing it.
Yeah. Well, that you didn't
Yeah.
have. Well, I think that was part of the issue is that you're running to because you don't know what's going on, and you put it's on you as the character that you weren't there, and that's the next lines that you do say. Or I should have been here. I should have taken care of her. I didn't realize that she was this depressed and all that, and yeah, it puts a lot of guilt on you. And Opti is making a brilliant point, which is as much as I hate Doki Doki Literature Club, I think it's weaponized. I think it's weaponized as each of the characters in the game are representative of the designer's experiences with mental health overall. I think that's a good point. So it's very
Still
likely.
doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't, but it maybe explains it. I guess. I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. Ugh.
It's a touchy subject.
It
I don't
is.
think many of us clinicians would be too hopeful of that being useful.
Mm. Yeah. I don't want to end on this note. Are you comfortable staying around for another few minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Because we are going to get into the nitty, the gritty gaming disorder. Thanks, ICD 11. So the Who.
2021.
So the WHO, World Health Organization, that's right, in the International Classification of Diseases has marked volume 11, or not volume, edition 11, has finally created, by finally meaning they have been talking about it and there have been discussions before, this was kind of coming on, and then they finally decided to solidify diagnosis specifically of gaming disorder. So you can just ramble off all your thoughts on it. I don't know if you want me to stop you at some point.
Let's see where we can go with it. So, the World Health Organization. I guess we'll just start with the group of people who created this diagnosis. I think the youngest one is, don't quote me on this, is 52. And through all of our research, yeah, I know, right? Older.
It's not. It's not an ageism thing. It's a.
Not.
Oh, chances
It's
are.
It's not, but in some way it is, because a lot of research shows that the older generations don't understand the new stuff that comes through and have a really negative view of anything new that does not jive with what they've been doing for 30, 40 years.
Sure.
And so that a lot of our research on that is showing that, which is a concern obviously for us younger clinicians coming up and being like, whoa, hold the boat here. The other thing is, we, and by me, a bunch of scholars approached them and pointed out a lot of their flaws in the research that they were using. And they ignored it. They just completely ignored it and said, no, we have enough evidence. And the evidence that they're using is very correlational based and based in a lot of different areas of the world that may or may not have aspects of gaming disorder that may or may not be real. And I'll give you an example. So, like, say the United States culture is very individualistic, and so we focus on the me,
Mm-hmm.
versus where a lot of the gaming disorder research has been showing has actually been over in the China, Korea, and Japan area, where it's very collectivistic. So if we look at it from even just a cultural standpoint on that aspect, why wouldn't it make sense that those populations are playing a little bit more? It's one of the ways that they connect to each other. It's a different point of the society over there versus ours. The other stuff, that we've seen is a correlation does not equal causation.
Yay!
Number one rule: correlations pretty much means squat. It just means that there is something that they're interrelated somehow. It doesn't tell us how. It doesn't tell us why they are interrelated. It just says that there's something there. Now, when we go and do further statistics, which most of these studies, I'd say 99% of them, do not do, and we do look at the actual percentage of what percentage of this gaming disorder or these gaming effects actually have on people, we're finding it down at like the 1%. Now, if we look at 1% of the population of the entire world, it is still not a lot of people. And a lot of those people, you can't even say 1% of the entire population, because we really just have the average gamer is right around 34 years old right now. So we really just have, like, say, age 8 until like maybe 40 of the world's population that we can include into that, which is really roughly only about 60% of the population anyways. So if we do that 1% of that 60% of the population, we're looking at a very, very small number. Now, there have been some studies out there that have suggested that the addiction rate is as high as 50%. And we're all like, you've got to be kidding me. But the criteria that they're using is what I'm akin to a house of cards. It's been created in a manner that is just not solidified in research. And everyone is just poking holes in it. Basically, what they did is they took the like a substance abuse criteria and they just switched that with gaming. That's pretty much what they did. And it's really, really unfortunate that they did that. And then
it's pretty generalized, right? I mean, that's why they didn't call it addiction. They called it disorder, because they could just generalize it to not like they say it's a problematic use, but they don't specify what problematic means. So problematic is basically in the eye of the beholder, which if it's the mom we were talking about earlier, you know, it's a problem on a much smaller, it would be a problem already, even though it's on a smaller a smaller scale.
Huge. So there's three main criteria of it: is that it had to have been gaming, they've had to interfere with their different environments, and it has to have been gone on with for 12 months or more. However, they don't specify, as you said, what's mild, moderate, or severe cases. And the clinician, whether they're well versed in with video games, the knowledge, the history, the ethos of it is what we call it, the culture, whether they're versed in it or not, can get rid of all that criteria if it hits what we call that moderate or severe case. But again, there's no definition of it. So you get someone who's in their 50s, and unfortunately, who doesn't know anything about video games, who sees this kid come in and the mom's like, just playing video games all day, blah this, blah that, not looking at grades, not looking at other areas of the person's life, not looking at social connectivity and other aspects to the gaming world. They're like, oh, you're addicted, I'm gonna just go and label you addicted. A big push of what they're trying to do is saying, well, now insurance will cover it. I can tell you right now, that's not how it works. Because we've had gambling disorder in the ICD and the DSM for the past 2 decades, and guess what? It is still not covered.
Get out of here! Really?
What? It's still not covered. It's crazy.
That is. You
submit that CPT code or the diagnostic code as a CPT, and they will deny it.
What?
Yep.
But that's the only argument I've heard for this whole thing. This whole time, that is the only argument I have heard, is that, oh, well, at least, yada yada. So, this makes me angry. You guys, I'm angry with you now. There's a lot of people in chat going, I'm mad about, I'm mad. I thought that was the upside. I thought that was what we get.
That is the upside, but hope is a wonderful thing that some could say you could be addicted to the hope of some things, to use the fun things. Fun words. I know, burn, right? Who? And some people are hoping that that's going to happen, but those people that are hoping it are the ones who run all of these nature resorts, who take all these video gamers and say, we're going to take the gaming and electronics out of your life, so you can't play them for these 60 days, and then we're going to put you back into society. We're going to take away all your coping skills, put you in nature, and that's going to cure you. Have
you ever seen so there's a subreddit called Thanks I'm Cured, right? I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not, but now I'm going to look at it.
So you have to look at it. And one of the most famous posts on it is this kid who was like, my parents told me I was depressed, So if I just traveled the world, I'd feel better. So here I am depressed in Egypt.
That's amazing.
And I mean, it summarizes everything to me. That's exactly that. Like, okay, so I'm not at home, still depressed, not surprisingly, but I get to be depressed in another country, so that's cool. Or I get to be depressed in nature, that's cool.
Oh, the killer button on this one is, and they charge the parents anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a month. That's not covered by insurance,
If
nor will
somebody
it probably
could,
be.
okay, so
I was like, I'd love to have that money, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna put this out there right now, you guys. I feel like it's really important for everybody to know. I owe just about that in student debt, in student loan debt left. Is like $40K. So if anybody, instead of sponsoring their child to do nonsense in the woods, would like to instead sponsor me so that I can go back to school and continue education and become a therapist like I've wanted to, that would be a good exchange of goods. And then I can help your child. And really, by that point, I hope you've figured out that, like, it's a scam. I'm going to scam you out of your money and then tell your kid that they're fine, because they're fine.
Yeah, those people parading around us that are not our favorite people. They're preying on a fear of the moral panic upon it, and it happened with rock music, happened with pinball machines. I mean, happened with comic books at some point. It's sad to see it happen, but the best thing anyone can do is, if this is going to be something, and by the smallest percentage chance they're going to actually pay for it, insurance, go see someone who knows the video game realm. Don't go see a doctor just who's like, well, I treat addiction. Yeah, because a lot of people don't understand it.
Right. That's the other problem. That's what's going to happen, is that people are going to come to, maybe even like a general doctor, and the general doctor is going to say, well, I know that this is a disorder now, so slap that over there and call me silly.
Every time.
Yeah. Oh, so it was asked in the audience. Amy Chibi asked us, do you think parents would change their minds if they saw his or her kid playing an RPG with a well-written story?
It's a good question. I think that if they were there to read the story and see and be able to connect the dots, I think it might change their mind a little bit. But most parents aren't going to sit there and watch their kids. They'd rather watch the HGTV, bazinga, and be able to say, like, well, why am my kid watching YouTube? Well, why are you watching HGTV? I mean, you're trying to learn how to do something, right? So are they. And I think that if they took the time and the effort to do it when we work with them and have parents do that, like the 15-year-old girl that I was talking about, I have mom watch anime with her, and it's changed their dynamic completely.
Yeah.
And so she's invested in the storyline, which means she's invested in her daughter as well on some level. And the daughter starts feeling that connection to her.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing that's going on when I find a group of people that like the same anime I like, right? Like I'm getting that approval, I'm getting those nice endorphins and all that good stuff.
You feel connected. You feel like you've met someone who understands you. You're like, oh my God, yeah, remember this one time that Bakugo went and tried to hit Deku, and Deku's like, not today, Baku. And it just did that, and then you just see everyone's face light up. They're like, yeah, that was really funny. And like, oh my God, that was great.
Yeah. And we almost are missing that. I want to make sure that the audience has asked all their questions. Exclamation Q if you would like any questions to be asked, because we do, unfortunately, have to let Dr. Bean go at some point tonight. Yes, I know, it's true. I'm very sad about it as well. We are going to have a different doctor come on to give their perspective, but I want to make sure that you first talk to this doctor and get all your questions. I had one earlier on. Opti, I thought I posted it, but can you repost it? I'm sorry. Do you mind reposting it? I would love to make sure that it gets answered too. And then Baku made a speech about friendship and somehow won the fight.
And it's just great.
So I guess if I have to ask my last question while people are collecting their questions, and you guys, limited time, limited edition, just like the books we'll be giving away in a moment, what CPT codes are y'all talking about denying? Oh, that there is, that addiction is a CPT code. Dawnstar works in insurance, so she's always our like check mark on that.
So there's a difference between CPT codes is how we bill it out, and psychologists have about 12 of them, versus the diagnostic code is the one that insurance panels don't always like to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So the gaming disorder is going to go underneath a diagnostic code that's going to be built out underneath the CPT code.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's fun
It's
insurance stuff. Oh, yeah.
super important, you guys, that everybody who's in this audit, 40 people right now, should know that information. Can't think of any questions further tonight, but I want to thank you both for doing this. Oh, of course. Is the ICD not international? Of course. No, it is. It is. Sock and Kate's. It totally is. That's not it. Yep, probably one the insurance companies yeet out the window. I have to say the prevalence of the word yeet has been puzzling and exhilarating at the same time for me. So I'm just going to throw that out there. What are your feelings on yeet? Do you want to yeet out of the window?
I love it when cultural phenomena just take off like that, because
right?
It's so interesting to see where they came from,
right?
But also to see where do they go.
Yeah, where do they go? Mm-hmm. I hated yeet at first, but now it's funny to me. All right, we have a few more questions. I've seen depth psychology counter-propose to CBT DBT, despite there being good deal of similarities between the two in terms of how they go about psychotherapy. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, absolutely. So depth psychology is pretty much the precursor to all the CBT, DBT. Everything comes when we're talking about depth psychology. We're talking about Freudian, Jungian. Those are the older ones, whereas DBT and CBT are more newer and they've been here shorter periods of time. So when someone comes out with a new theory, in all honesty, and even with my stuff that I do video game wise in the book, it's just usually the same ideas on some level, looked at it in a different light and repackaged. And so even with what I'm doing, all I'm doing is talking about tropes in an archetypal format and how can we use that to our advantage, versus CBT is just talking about cognitive thinking and different ways of dealing with certain irrational and rational thoughts, and how can we deal with those in that aspect, versus a Freudian Jungian be like, well, a little bit more about that. It really seems like you're getting some anxiety. I really wonder what you think about that, or I wonder what's going on in that aspect, getting them to mentate or mentalize about it a little bit more, rather than, in my opinion, kind of telling a little bit more, be like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a rational thought, which to me feels a little demeaning, but that's just my personality.
I'm sure you're not the only one who thinks so, especially in this audience. We will become the first elder gaming generation. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it is going to be amazing, because the more clinicians that we find, like when we did a panel at East called Empowering Gamers, and we talked about, we had some really great panelists up there, and we talked about where all of us are going and how we're using these things. And we realized midway through the panel, holy crap, we're like the ones leading the charge in this aspect, or we're not the only ones. There's more and more people coming on board to this aspect, and more younger clinicians coming into the field that want to do this, that see it as the way that we do it. We just unfortunately happen to be there first for them, but that's not a bad thing, because that means we're taking away a lot of the crap that they're not going to have to deal with. And so when we get to that aspect, when we get to that point, I think we're going to make a bunch of change, and we're going to do some really, really great things. But it takes time. And not everything's done overnight. The amount that we have already changed over this last 3 years is astounding. And it's very, very rapid. And it's one of the things where we need to also sometimes slow down a little bit and make sure that we're following ethical guidelines, and how can we manage certain things and aspects appropriately.
Wow. Opti asked the follow-up question. Would you argue that this newer idea of therapy, because it's data-based, is why it's more popular?
Which new therapy?
Yeah, I got lost too. I don't know. Asked the question. I'm a terrible host. I asked the questions in the wrong order. Opti, forgive me. I'm so sorry. Does chemical extinction, Moopaloo asks, does chemical extinction work for gaming disorders as well? I don't know what chemical extinction is, so we need a backhand here.
So it kind of goes back into, and obviously correct if I'm not answering the question correctly. It goes into the idea that dopamine and adrenaline factors and neurotransmitters are activated when we're playing certain games or we're doing certain things. And it kind of goes back to that comment where gaming only gives 150% of your 100% of endorphins and dopamine are
Mhm.
activated in that capacity versus
Mhm.
heroin is five or 500,000 or something like that, or not
Uh-huh.
500,000, sorry, 5,000.
Mhm.
So for chemical extinction, I'm not a big fan of thinking of us as just chemicals and some meat bags. I think that
Chemicals
reducing us,
meat bags.
yeah, I think reducing us down into that neurobiology is detrimental to the human spirit and our cognitions, because then you're basically just saying like, oh, love is just a neurotransmitter, and while you, on some level you're true on that, there's so much more that goes into it.
Right.
So
Right.
when we talk about archetypes, we're always talking about like the big philosophical meaning of it up here, which then when we think about it gets trapped into an idea. We lose the essence of it a little bit, and then when we lose the essence, we then kind of think of it as a picture, and in that picture we lose even more and more of that essence. So if we look at it from a neurobiology standpoint, we're talking about something that's up here, down at this level, that we're just gotten rid of so much aspects of it, because we're just saying those things don't matter when in
Mhm.
fact they do.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. You guys, don't tell me that's it, because we gotta let him go when you're done. Don't tell me that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We are now going to do a book giveaway, right? Yeah. Which one do you want to give away first, and do you want to give it a little intro while I set up the giveaway?
Absolutely. I think that we're going to do three of these bad boys, which are awesome, just so you know, which has,
Exclamation bean, but listen to what you're entering first for.
yeah. So this is the Legend of Psychology of Zelda. And one of the wonderful things is it's got some wonderful chapters of embodying the hero, personal shadows, archetypal attraction, a little bit more on that one, unmasking grief, which has by far been the most popular chapter out of all of them. And so, what I would love to do is make sure that I love giving back, because being a gamer myself, I also know where I came from, and to have a book like this when I was younger, I would have killed for this. And so to have someone be like, "Oh my god, I really won something," or I got something out of this, and I looked at it from a different psychological lens, to me says, "Oh my god, this is great. I can do this."
That's awesome. So I am going to go ahead and go ahead and purchase one of those when all is said and done, because my husband is a huge Zelda fan. Behind me is
I
a
can see it.
oh
Yeah.
wait, yeah, there you go. There's that.
Hmm.
There's that, and then there's a Hyrule. That's a Hyrule Shield clock, which is like
That
one
is
of his favorite
awesome.
possessions. It's from Etsy. It's laser cut. He absolutely adores it. But yeah, so we'll be getting that. So yeah, you guys, enter away exclamation bean for this book. 3 people are giving it away. 3 people are. Oh, did something happen? Oh, we're being rated by Dabraham Lincoln. Dabraham Lincoln is another Take This ambassador. So thank you. Thank you
Oh,
so much for coming by. You guys are here at the perfect time, Reno. First of all, we finished the interview, which is the most important part. But second of all, we are giving away. We're giving. Do you mind doing a little, like, explaining again the book really
sure,
quick, since we have all
absolutely.
these new people in here?
Absolutely. So this one right here is we're going to give away three of the Legend of Zelda psychology books, which goes into why we gravitate towards this idea of the game and how come it's been so important. Talking about the from the music to unmasking grief, which has been the most popular chapter out of it, but also the concepts of projection, link shadow, why it does an important aspect of us, and the orphan archetype that we talked a little bit about tonight too.
You guys got to watch the VOD to learn about the orphan archetype. Dabraham
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln and all of your wonderful human beings, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you. My name is Mxiety. I'm a mental health streamer and writer and advocate here on the platform. I am also a member of Take This, just like Day. Day was on the show actually recently as well, and it was really awesome to interview her in the series of interviewees. Today we are interviewing a professional, Dr. Anthony Bean, who's considered the video game doctor. He has been fantastic to talk to, and we've talked about a range of pretty much everything. So you guys go check out the VOD. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you everybody who has come into the show. I should add, the giveaway is only for the continental US. Is that right?
Well, I mean, I'll have to ship it from Amazon if they really want. It might take a little bit because they'll ship internationally from the US. But...
Okay. All right, there you go. All right, so you guys, their options are endless. Thank you so much, everybody who came in with the raid. I appreciate you. I love you all. Thank you. I love these llamas. All right, so I think that's about just enough entrance. Exclamation bean to enter. These are your last moments. Don't forget, if you are subscribed, you have a higher chance of winning, and there are 3 books to win, so just consider that. If it's too why don't we figure out Twinkie Talks if it will be difficult, and then we'll go from there. I don't think it sounds difficult at all, so don't worry about it. Yeah, Dr. Mick Live is here. Dr. Mick's like, I want this book. Dr. Mick is gonna be on the show in about half an hour, but he's here now and he wants a book. All right, you guys, let's do it. We are closing the giveaway, and we have 3 winners. Is that right?
3 winners, yes.
3 winners. What you're going to do if you won is send an email to mxiety.marie@gmail.com with your exact address and name, please. Especially if it's sending internationally, we have to make sure that we have your name, so your game handle will not do. Okay, so it's mxiety.marie@gmail.com. If you're not comfortable with giving out your address, then that's a big old, too bad. So here we go. 1. Kilroy 2K has won. Please speak up in chat. If you're not here, it's gonna be given away to somebody else. Just warning you. Bixie, hey. That's what's I think we're gonna talk. If you don't mind DMing me information, and if you wanted to talk about that, I'm definitely not the best person equipped to talk to you about that. So I think it's somebody. I think you should talk to somebody who's immediately next to you. Also, if you're 8 years old, you shouldn't be on this platform because that's illegal. Just a heads up. Kilroy, yay! Thank you so much. You won. So mxiety.marie@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being here. Clearly, you're also a fan of Dr. Mick. So a fan of Dr. Mick is a wonderful friend of mine. All right, here we go. Number 2. Dawnstar! Yay, one of my moderators! Hooray! Congratulations, Dawnstar. You know where to send your address, and yes, please resend it to me. Yes, you know I don't know where they are, and I don't keep your addresses, so please resend me your address. Yay! All right, number 3. Last but not least, but definitely not least, because this book is awesome. Okay. Yee! Daverham, amazing, my reader. Welcome and congratulations. That is so awesome. All right. This is amazing. So we have 3 winners. mxiety.marie@gmail.com is where you send your address. And thank you so much. Did you have another book that you don't have an example of, but you wanted to give away one of those? Oops.
Ooh, man. Just throwing stuff now. Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to throw it
so
at
excited.
you. I'm
so excited. I also want to do a giveaway of my video gamers for clinicians book as well. But I only have one of those to give away.
Only one.
I don't have a physical copy, unfortunately, because it's at work. But you will get it. I promise you.
I'm sure it's quite all right. They'll take your word for it. But yeah, guys. So one more time. What is it?
It's the Clinician's Guide to Working with Video Gamers and Games and Therapy.
Got it. Exclamation book to win this one. Come on, enter away. There's only one. Only one will walk away. That's already on my shelf. Oh my God, Dr. Mick. Of course it is. That's awesome, you guys. Let's go. We have 3 entrants. I'm going to hold it open for just a few minutes longer. While we're doing that, do you have any closing remarks, Dr. Bean?
I think that being a gamer is one of the most powerful things you could ever be. And I encourage everyone to explore the different gaming aspects of what they give to you, how you can work with them, and also why you play the game. I think it's amazing. Better words have not been said. I mean, they have been, and they're on this podcast a little bit sooner than right now. But yeah. Thank you, everybody who entered. Last few moments! Exclamation book, and we gotta let Dr. Bean go.
Come
Yeah,
on, guys. He's got to
with
go home.
the clinician guidebook, we actually have a lot of parents who buy it who can read it too.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they actually bring the book and they're like, holy crap, I actually see how my family dynamics are broken into these different archetypes where I'm the healer, my son's the warrior, and my husband's the tank. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm
Oh.
like, holy crap, you're blowing my mind right
Oh
now.
my gosh, that is
Yeah.
so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Aw, wow. It's amazingly accessible. That is wonderful that that book like exists. That's isn't it? Isn't it, Opti? You guys have to connect. Opti, actually, I don't. There's definitely an intersection there. So Optimistic Gamer, just recently, he's a mental health streamer also, but he just recently moved his content towards mythology, and he's now going to be exploring video game mythology in depth.
I really want him to go to Pacifica.
Ooh, okay.
Which is the school that I went to, and I think that he would do amazing there. And exploring through their mythology program is great. I would say that with a mythology program, as you get your doctorate in it, you may not be able to get licensed as a clinician. So I would probably do the clinical psych route and then do a heavy emphasis on the mythology.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. He's very excited in chat. I imagine Opti is eternally screeching happy. Yeah, that's what I imagine as well. All right, we are done accepting entries. Here we go. One person, many will enter. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 will enter. One will leave. Who is it? Delve Within! Congratulations, you have won a copy! Congratulations! Yes, it's the email again is mxiety.marie@gmail.com. Send away your address with your full name and we'll be able to send you the book. I actually had to make a decision between pursuing my streaming career in Pacifica this year, so further education is on hold to pursue my personal passions for the time being. Further education is very expensive in the United States, and
Yes, it is.
holds back, unfortunately, more people than I wish to hear. Yeah. Have everybody who has to go, I love you. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much for coming in with Day. I appreciate it. If only one will leave, what am I stuck in? Yeah, I don't know. In some realm. It's probably a shadow realm or something. I don't know how you're going to get out either. Dr. Bean's leaving, so he can't help you out. Dr. Bean, thank you. Thank you so much for being on. Everybody, please stick around. We're going to come back with more amazing content for you. We're going to be talking about today's events. We're going to be talking about current events. We're going to be talking to Dr. Mick. Stick around. You won't regret it. I love you. And don't forget to be the light. See you soon.